famous fires in history. The burning of the Branch Davidian compound, the home they called Mount Carmel, after a siege of 51 days by agents of the federal government. Millions of Americans have seen this fire and heard the official account of how it started. That it was deliberately set by the Branch Davidians inside the compound in an insane act of murderous self-immolation in which dozens of men, women, and children died. So far, relatively few Americans have seen this fire, spewing from the maw of a tank assaulting the compound. But to many of those who have, a profoundly disturbing question arises. If the government's tanks set the fire at Mount Carmel, the implications are enormous. The official account, the government story, approved at the very highest levels, is a lie. Does our government have the power to lie to us on so important a question as murder and get away with it? How could such a thing be true in America? In this program, we will examine the awful consequences of excessive government power, excesses which lead inevitably to lies, extortion, and violence.
Hello, I'm Ron Paul, Chairman of the National Endowment for Liberty.
Dr. Ron Paul is a physician, author, and former member of Congress.
Some of you may find this program disturbing because the subjects that we talk about we just wished weren't true. But unfortunately, I believe they are true, and I think we ought to talk about them. Most of the time when we think about government abuse, we think about the tax system, how government comes in and taxes us to do the things that they believe are worthwhile. We see the regulatory system that comes in and regulates our personal lives and our business life. And we see the monetary system where it destroys and disrupts our monetary system and steals the values of our savings. But generally, we don't think of the physical abuse from government, but we must start thinking about that. George Washington warned us about this. He said, government is not reason, it is not eloquence, it is force. Like fire, it's a dangerous servant and a fearful master. I'm afraid we're moving in the direction where our government is becoming a fearful master. We are having more violence in the streets than ever before, and we have more laws on the books and more people in prisons than ever before, and yet we have not come up with a solution. If there wasn't a solution, there would be no purpose in this program. But the National Endowment for Liberty believes there is a solution. We must make an effort to understand our problems, how we got into the mess we're in, and make a plan on how we can get out of this. That's what this program is all about, and I believe you're going to see and hear information in the next 30 minutes that will help us in our efforts to restore America.
Governments have always sponsored violence. They have fought war upon war, inflicted violent penalties in the name of justice, presented violent entertainment to the masses, and when it suited their purpose, turned their power against the people. This man was one of the early masters, Tsar Ivan the Terrible. His atrocities reached their peak in 1570 when he became convinced there was a plot against him centered in the Russian city of Novgorod. Pronouncing every single inhabitant guilty, he and his soldiers systematically tortured and killed virtually the entire city. Sadly for humanity, the record of government-sponsored violence didn't end in medieval Russia, and it wasn't always a depraved, all-powerful czar who perpetrated it either. The leaders of the French Revolution, who lived halfway between Ivan's time and our own, were liberals who spoke of liberty, equality, and fraternity. But as soon as they achieved power, they began a series of violent reprisals still known as the Reign of Terror. And things have gotten no better in our supposedly enlightened 20th century. In Ivan's Russia, Joseph Stalin murdered peasant farmers known as kulaks by the millions. A few years later, in Hitler's Germany, more millions of lives were destroyed in the concentration camps of the Holocaust. All races of humankind have participated in the brutal inhumanity of government terror. In the 1970s, millions of Africans and Asians died as a result of the murderous actions of tyrants, such as Uganda's Idi Amin and Cambodia's Pol Pot. But surely not here in America. We have known no reign of terror, no Holocaust, no killing fields. True enough. But our government did put thousands of innocent American citizens in concentration camps during World War II for no crime other than having Japanese ancestry. And after the war, government agents did inject other Americans without their knowledge with potentially lethal plutonium and other radioactive substances. The city leaders of Philadelphia did drop a bomb on the headquarters of an organization called MOVE in 1985, destroying 61 homes and killing 5 children in the process. Los Angeles police officers did beat Rodney King senseless. And of course, there is the Internal Revenue Service. Civilized society isn't exactly the term for the Internal Revenue Service. One day, in a small town in rural Maryland, revenue agents raided the home of an Amish-type family for alleged back taxes. They didn't need a search warrant, just an IRS writ of entry and 39 guns. In Alaska, agents tried to seize a woman's car while she was in court contesting a tax judgment. When she came out and locked herself in the car, this is what happened. And in Michigan, when a daycare center owed back taxes, agents came up with a novel plan. They took over the center, locked the children in a back room, and forced the parents to pay them directly before they could take their children home. Today, it is in the enforcement of gun control laws that some of the most tragic cases of American abuse are found. One of the most shocking of all took place in a remote mountain cabin in Idaho in 1992. There, a man named Randy Weaver, who belonged to a religious sect called Christian Identity and is alleged to be a white separatist, had gone with his wife Vicki, his children, the family dog, and a friend named Kevin Harris. Weaver had sold an undercover federal agent a shotgun a quarter of an inch shorter than allowed by the law. He didn't show up for his trial, having been given the wrong date by the officials. In retaliation, agents surrounded the Weaver cabin and shot both his dog and his 14-year-old son in the back. Harris returned fire, killing one of the agents. The next day, when Vicki Weaver stepped out onto the porch of the cabin, her baby in her arms, a federal sharpshooter shot her dead. Weaver and Harris surrendered, were tried on multiple charges, and found innocent by a jury, after the government was shown to have fabricated evidence against them.
I just want to thank the jury for 6 months? Everything.
How do you feel about the verdict, Kevin?
Good, good. I think like the right thing happened.
It proves again that a jury, if it has all the facts, can do justice in this country. It's a hard, hard row, as you can see, but it was done here.
But can justice really have been done until someone is charged and convicted of causing the death of Vicki and Sammy Weaver, guilty of no crime, yet gunned down by federal agents? No one has ever been charged for shooting this man either, but someone did shoot him one night in San Diego.
I'd come home about 10:30 and gone to bed, and I was sound asleep.
Don Carlson works for a manufacturing company. He's as normal as you or me. And if what happened on a night in August 1992 could happen to him, it could happen to anyone.
I was awoken by loud banging on my front door. I wasn't real sure if I was dreaming or it was real. I got out of bed. I went to the hallway opposite my front door. And I yelled as loud as I could, "Who's there?" I repeated that several times and got no response.
The loud banging continued. Carlson could hear voices outside, people running. Frightened, he picked up the portable phone and called 911. Then he went back to his bedroom, got a revolver, and returned to the front door.
I fired at the front door, and people fired at me. I was hit immediately in the right thigh. I went into the bedroom and collapsed on my left side on the floor. Soon thereafter, I was shot 2 more times.
Bleeding badly and in extreme pain, his right arm bone shattered by one of the 3 gunshot wounds he had suffered, Don Carlson was handcuffed and taken to a hospital where he was manacled to his bed. In all this time, no one ever officially told him who was responsible for the outrage perpetrated upon him. He learned from news reports that drug agents had raided his house on the unfounded tip of a paid informant.
You almost died, didn't you?
Yeah, I almost died.
The list of victims of government violence goes on and on. Before it was destroyed by a forest fire in 1993, the house at the end of this rugged mountain trail in the Malibu Hills near Los Angeles belonged to a man named Donald Scott. Early in the morning of October 2nd, 1992, a posse of 33 federal, state, and county drug agents drove here, shot the lock off this gate, and moved in to serve a warrant for Scott's arrest. Ventura County District Attorney Michael Bradbury.
First of all, the warrant should never have been issued. The officer gave misinformation and false information in order to obtain the warrant. In my opinion, these people could have been called on the telephone and asked to come outside. They did not pose a threat. They were not dangerous, inherently dangerous. They were, Mr. Scott was basically a law-abiding individual. No drugs, no marijuana, under cultivation or otherwise, was ever found on that property.
As in the case of Don Carlson, an innocent man was awakened by people, he knew not whom, trying to break into his house. Like Carlson, he assumed they were intruders, but the results were even more tragic.
The gentleman inside came out with a gun in his hand, having been just awakened, was told to put the gun down, and apparently as he brought it down in the direction of one of the officers, and he was shot and killed.
A perjured warrant, excessive force. But Bradbury's official report contains an even more startling revelation as to the motivation for the deadly raid. Scott's 200-acre property was valued in the millions.
One of the primary purposes of the Scott investigation was to seize that property. Again, you don't issue plat maps and provide information on what comparable properties sold for in the area when you're simply going in to seize marijuana under cultivation. It's disingenuous to even suggest for a moment that seizing that land was not a prime motivator, one of several, but a prime motivator in the Scott case.
So it's come to that. In the United States, in the 1990s, an innocent man was framed and killed because the government wanted his land.
America is a nation like none before it, conceived in liberty. But the question is, are we still growing toward the fulfillment of freedom's promise, or toward a stifling world where every administration, every session of Congress leaves us with less personal freedom, fewer individual rights? This program is being brought to you by the National Endowment for Liberty, a nonpartisan organization dedicated to preserving freedom of choice, opportunity, expression, and economic activity for all Americans, regardless of race, creed, religion, or color. These freedoms are enshrined in documents such as the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights. But now they are threatened. As the federal government grows ever larger and more powerful, freedom grows smaller and weaker. This telephone number will connect you with the National Endowment for Liberty. Don't lose it, because the survival of liberty in America depends on what you know about your rights. To inform you and to show you how to identify your freedoms and put them to work for you, how to recognize when they're under attack and to defend them, the endowment has assembled a never-before-offered collection of some of the greatest books of all time on the subject of liberty, including Frederick Bastiat's brilliant essay, The Law, 20th century masterpieces by Ludwig von Mises and Hans Sennholz, and a wonderful new anthology entitled The Freedom Philosophy, 14 inspiring essays by writers as different as Professor Benjamin Rogie and frontiersman Davy Crockett. This is a veritable library of liberty you can own and pass on to your children to arm them with their rights. Here's how. Call the number on your screen, Pledge just $29 to become a sponsor of the National Endowment for Liberty. The money you contribute will help sound the alarm through programs like this, which expose the threat of big government. To encourage you to act now, a VHS copy of the program you are watching is yours free when you contribute $29 or more. Just ask for it. And for a contribution of $65, we'll not only send you a videotape copy of this program, we'll also include the Library of Liberty I described moments ago. Send your check now or call and contribute by credit card to receive yet another special bonus, Ron Paul's dramatic petition to the 103rd Congress, which shows exactly how to fix what's wrong with Washington once and for all. But you must act now. We urgently need you in this crusade for freedom because together we can turn this country around and march proudly into the 21st century as the most productive and freest people on earth, the way America is supposed to be. The alternative is unacceptable. So call now, but if you can't find a pencil to write the number down, keep looking. We'll show it again later in the program.
The ones I've talked to have all been very nice, normal people. Most of them have been better educated than the general public, and certainly better educated than I expected for what I consider to be a rural group, group out in the country, kind of isolated by themselves.
Since the tragedy at Waco, Indianapolis attorney Linda Thompson has devoted most of her life to investigating the case of the Branch Davidians.
You've got Chinese people, you've got Japanese people, you've got black people, you've got white people, you've got young people from tiny babies all the way up to an elderly man in his 80s. And it was literally a microcosm of America.
The judge did not authorize a military attack on that home. What the judge authorized was a search to see if there was illegal weapons inside.
Dick DeGuerin was hired by David Koresh's mother to represent her son. He was the first outsider allowed into the compound during the siege and tried to negotiate a solution.
And what they did, however, was to attack all of the people, to go about serving a civilian search warrant in a military fashion. It was unjustified. That excessive force and the fact that the government agents lied about it, not only originally but also at the trial.
How many Branch Davidians were killed in the initial raid, we will never know. 4 agents were killed. Incredibly, there have been contradictory statements by the government as to when the 4 died. But it cannot be ruled out that some may have been killed by friendly fire.
Some of the agents might have been killed by friendly fire, in other words, by gunfire from the ATF agents themselves. In at least one of the cases, the bullet that was recovered from one of the agents was a hydroshock bullet, which is what the agents were carrying. It's been outlawed. Ordinary citizens can't buy that kind of ammunition because it's so vicious. It's outlawed by international treaty. We can't use it in wartime. We can't use it against our enemies in war. Just as and this is an aside, just as the CS gas that was later used by the FBI has been outlawed for war. We can't use it against our enemies, but Janet Reno used it against the children.
But before the CS gas was used, there was a siege of 51 days. Psychological warfare techniques, including sleep deprivation, were used. Agents cut off the water supply and then used deteriorating sanitary conditions as one excuse for the final assault. They cut off the electricity, forcing the use of kerosene lamps, an obvious fire hazard. Then, on April 19th, they moved in. For 6 hours, the toxic gas, banned for use in war, was spewed into the building. Then the fires started.
In each case of a fire ignition, at least 2 minutes or more before, there's a tank right there below where the fire starts. We've got footage showing that the tanks that they had were equipped to shoot flames, flame-throwing tanks. And it's coincident, I mean, that in every single point of origin, there is a tank there right before the fire breaks out.
Although no convincing explanation has shown otherwise, not everyone agrees that the tank really did shoot flames. But regardless, Dick DeGuerin's point is clear.
But I don't think it matters, because as sure as I'm sitting here, I can tell you that it would not have caught on fire, it would have not have burned that day if the tanks and tear gas hadn't started rolling.
Each time they escalate. Last time it was Weaver, 1 little boy, 1 woman. This time it was Waco, 96 people, 25 children. What's it going to be next time, a whole city?
It is not completely certain how many people died in the fire at Mount Carmel and how many were children. Another plausible number is 17, and it is this figure that songwriter Carl Klang has fixed on in his moving musical memorial.
Just in case you don't remember, let me jog your memory. In a church they called the Waco Compound, back in April '93, 17 little children, all so helpless and so small, died a senseless death of gas and flames. How many names can you recall? 17 little children, don't it make you wonder why? 17 little children, how could they deserve to die? How did you sleep last night, Bill Clinton? Tell me, did you feel their pain? As 17 little children cried out and perished in the flames. 17 little children, don't it make you wonder why? 17 little children, how could they deserve to die? Maybe we should stop and ask ourselves, have we become so blind? Will 17 little children finally open up your mind? Open up your mind.
Every day, thousands of honest police officers look death in the eye as they bravely attempt to combat the violence in our society. Yet while criminals go free or escape with minimal sentences, innocent victims like Don Carlson barely escape with their lives, and sometimes don't. Vicki and Sammy Weaver, Donald Scott, and the Branch Davidians are dead, along with dozens of other victims of government brutality. In America, the law used to command respect. It used to protect constitutional rights like freedom of religion, the right to bear arms, private property. If there is disrespect for law in America today, it may be because the law no longer means those things. Religious dissent is persecuted, gun ownership criminalized, property seized. Government has become a dehumanizing welfare state, a rat's nest of regulations, and a violent enforcer of its taxes and privileges. It doesn't have to be that way. America can return to the ideals of our founders, and the National Endowment for Liberty is committed to leading the way. We want you to be part of our crusade for freedom. We want to continue to spread the message of liberty. But to do so, we must have the financial support of freedom-loving Americans such as yourself. That's why we're making the exciting offers I described earlier in this program to encourage you to become a sponsor of the endowment. Let me review for you now the specific offer the endowment is making in conjunction with this program only. For a tax-deductible contribution of just $29, you will receive your own VHS videotape copy of this program, Firepower. And you will receive Ron Paul's dramatic Petition to the 103rd Congress. For $65, you will receive the videotape, the petition, and 4 other outstanding books. The Law by Frederick Bastiat, 20th Century Masterpieces by Ludwig von Mises and Hans Sennholz, and the 14-essay collection entitled The Freedom Philosophy. For $110, you will receive the tape and all of the above books, plus 6 additional books, including Henry Hazlitt's classic Economics in One Lesson, and the monumental study by F.A. Hayek, The Road to Serfdom. And there's even more. Call now and we'll tell you how to get your very own VHS copies of the entire 13-program series At Issue, sponsored by the Endowment and seen on national TV. You'll hear the ideas of people like Congressman Newt Gingrich, Senator Charles Grassley, eminent economist Dr. Walter Williams, nationally syndicated columnist Joe Sobran, actor-comedian Jimmy J.J. Walker, and many others. Don't hesitate. Call now. Pledge your tax-deductible contribution to the cause of freedom and receive these inspirational books and tapes as our gift to you. You'll be contributing to a cause whose importance cannot be overstated, while improving your own understanding of the crucial issues facing America, you and your family, and of the great philosophy of freedom that holds the solution to every one of them. And now a final word from Dr. Ron Paul.
The civil rights of all Americans are threatened when government power grows too large, because the temptation to abuse power grows just as fast. Welfare is like a narcotic. It teaches people to be dependent. It teaches them to be irresponsible. It teaches them to resort to violence if necessary. This is the reason we have so much violence in the inner city. To combat the irresponsibility and violence it caused in the first place, government grabs new powers and the threat to civil liberty becomes greater. To pay for the government programs, more and more taxes must be collected from innocent Americans, which then injures their ability to make a living. Coercion must be used. There's an invasion of privacy that occurs. In order to cover up the coercion, more and more lies are told. We call this program Firepower. It's a program about fire, but it's also about power. Where will the fire break out next time? In your town? In your home? In your church? You say it can't happen in America, and you're partly right. But we have seen that it has begun to happen, but this cannot continue. If we, the people, take back the powers that have gravitated to Washington. Under the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, these powers were intended to be dispersed among the people. We must demand a commitment to these principles from our leaders and those who seek to be our leaders. The hour is late. Already there is an inventory of tragedy. We must stop the fire before it spreads, before any more innocent people die. The good news is that we can, because this is America. I'm Ron Paul. Thanks for watching.